The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Hundreds of different alien species sat in their special chairs, each one designed for their unique bodies. The air buzzed with electronic voices as universal translators changed alien languages into words everyone could understand. Ambassador Kang Ho sat quietly in the human section. His dark suit looked simple compared to the colorful robes and metal armor worn by other delegates. Next to him, Captain Ji-woo checked her datapad nervously. She had read some old files on the way here, strange warnings about humans written by dead alien races. But those were just old stories, right? At the center of the hall, a massive snake-like creature rose from its coiled position. This was Speaker Silmesh of the Vextar Empire. His scales were dark green and seemed to shine under the lights. When he spoke, his forked tongue flicked out between sharp teeth. "Fellow members of the Galactic Council," Silmesh began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "We have called this emergency meeting to discuss a serious problem. The humans have become too bold." Murmurs spread through the hall. Many aliens turned to look at the small human delegation. Kang Ho did not move. His face showed nothing. "For too long," Silmesh continued, "we have allowed this young species to act as if they belong among us. Their cargo ships use our ancient trade routes without permission. Their colonies spread into systems that rightfully belong to older, wiser races." A crystal-like being near the front began to glow with worried colors. This was Elder Zephyr of the Quell Collective. His voice sounded like music when he spoke. "Perhaps we should remember the old warnings," Zephyr said carefully. "The archives from the predecessor races speak of silence," Silmesh hissed. "Those are just myths told by extinct weaklings. We are the Vextar Empire. We have conquered 300 worlds. We do not fear bedtime stories about hairless apes." Other Vextar delegates laughed, making horrible sounds that echoed through the hall. Many other species joined in, though some remained quiet and worried. Captain Ji-woo leaned toward Kang Ho. "Sir, I've been reading the old files. There are warnings in languages we barely understand. Something about a war machine and the Great Silence. Maybe we should—" Kang Ho raised his hand slightly. Ji-woo stopped talking. Speaker Silmesh raised himself to his full height, nearly 3 meters tall. "The Vextar Empire has made a decision. We declare the human species unfit for galactic citizenship. They are too primitive, too aggressive, too dangerous to exist alongside civilized beings." The hall became very quiet. Even the translator machines seemed to pause. "We demand," Silmesh announced, "that all humans return to their home system within 1 solar cycle. If they refuse, the Vextar Empire will remove them from the galaxy permanently." Some aliens gasped. Others made worried sounds in their own languages. A formal challenge like this had not happened in over 1,000 years. Elder Zephyr's crystal body flashed bright red with alarm. "This is madness. The old texts clearly warn against. The old texts are worthless," another Vextar delegate shouted. "Written by species too weak to survive. We have studied the humans. They have no real military. They have fought no major wars. They are soft merchants and farmers playing at being explorers." Slowly, Ambassador Kang Ho stood up. The entire hall turned to watch him. He was not tall or impressive like the aliens around him. His gray hair was neatly combed and his hands were steady. When he spoke, his voice was calm and quiet. "You are making a mistake." Silmesh laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Threats? From a species that has never won a real war? Your people hide behind trade agreements and peace treaties. You have no idea what real conflict means." Kang Ho smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "That's where you're wrong, Speaker Silmesh. We've never lost a war." The Vextar delegate's eyes narrowed. "You've never fought a war worth mentioning." "Haven't we?" Kang Ho asked. He pressed a button on his datapad. Images appeared on the large screens around the hall. "These are from our homeworld, Earth. This is what we call the Cretaceous impact, an asteroid 10 kilometers wide that hit our planet 65 million years ago. It killed most life on Earth." The images showed devastation beyond imagination. Burning continents, poisoned skies, frozen oceans. "We survived that," Kang Ho continued. "We survived ice ages that lasted hundreds of thousands of years. We survived volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. We survived plagues that killed billions of us. And do you know what else we survived?" He pressed another button. New images appeared. Humans fighting humans with primitive weapons, then advanced weapons, then weapons that could destroy entire cities. "Each other," Kang Ho said simply. For our entire history, the deadliest enemy any human ever faced was another human. We fought with sticks and stones. We fought with metal and fire. We fought with chemicals and radiation and diseases. We fought until we learned that the only way to survive was to stop fighting. Elder Zephyr's crystals were now flashing rapid patterns of terror. The archives mention this. They call it the training ground, a world so hostile that its children become what? Silmesh demanded. Become the thing that eats monsters, Kang Ho answered. Every predator on our world learned to fear us. Every disease that tried to kill us made us stronger. Every disaster that should have ended us taught us new ways to survive. We didn't become peaceful because we're weak, Speaker Silmesh. We became peaceful because we're so good at war that we scared ourselves. The hall was completely silent now. Even the humming of the air system seemed too loud. But that was a long time ago, Silmesh said, though his voice was less confident. Your current generation knows nothing of real conflict. They are soft, weak. Captain Jiwoo stood up beside her ambassador. Her hand moved to the weapon at her side, not because she planned to use it, but because old instincts were awakening. You want to know about the current generation? She asked. Every human child learns to swim before they can walk properly, because our world is covered with water that can drown you. Every human learns to make fire, because our nights are cold and dark and full of things that hunt. Every human learns to run, because everything on our planet can chase you. She smiled, and for the first time, some aliens noticed that human teeth were designed for cutting meat. We learn these things for fun now, she continued, but we still learn them. In our schools, children play games where they pretend to fight and hunt and survive. They think it's entertainment. But muscle memory never forgets. Kang Ho nodded. You have one solar cycle to reconsider this challenge, Speaker Silmesh. Not because we need time to prepare for war, but because war preparations take time, and we'd prefer to give your people a chance to evacuate their families first. Silmesh's scales turned darker with rage. You dare threaten the mighty Vextar Empire? No threats, Kang Ho replied calmly. Just a friendly warning from one apex predator to another. You're about to wake something that the galaxy spent a very long time helping us put to sleep. The old texts your elder mentioned? They're not myths. They're instruction manuals, written by the last species that made this mistake. He gathered his papers and stood to leave. One solar cycle, he repeated. Use it wisely. As the human delegation walked out of the hall, Elder Zephyr's voice followed them, translated into panicked harmonics. The archives say they stopped counting their dead after the first billion. They stopped counting their enemies dead after the first trillion. They call it the human war, the last time someone was foolish enough to threaten their survival. But Speaker Silmesh was already planning his attack, convinced that old stories could not stop modern weapons. He was about to learn why the oldest rule in the galaxy existed: do not challenge the humans. Dr. So Min had been working in her laboratory on Luna Station for 18 hours straight. Her coffee had gone cold long ago, but she barely noticed. Emergency signals were coming from every human colony in the outer systems. The Vextar Empire had kept their promise. The first attacks came without warning. 3 human colonies, New Sol, Haven's Rest, and Darwin's Landing, went silent within hours of each other. The few escape pods that made it out told horrible stories. Vextar bioships had appeared in orbit and rained acid down on the settlements. The aliens had taken survivors, but not as prisoners. As Fu. Admiral Taesung stood in the command center of Earth Defense Force headquarters. Around him, officers who had spent their careers managing rescue operations and exploration missions now faced their first real war. Most of them looked lost. Sir, Lieutenant Boram said from her communication station, we're getting reports from 17 more colonies. Vextar fleets are moving toward human space in massive numbers. Our outer defense ships they're not responding anymore. Taesung nodded grimly. He had expected this. The Vextar had spent centuries perfecting their military. Humans had spent the same time perfecting peace. Activate Protocol 7, he ordered. Boram frowned at her computer screen. Sir, I can't find Protocol 7 in any of our current databases. Check the deep archives, Taesung told her. Section Pre-Contact Emergency Measures. Use my personal authorization code. While Boram searched, Taesung looked out the window at Earth below. Beautiful blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. His ancestors had fought wars on that planet for thousands of years before they learned to stop. Now he wondered if that had been a mistake. On the mining colony of Kepler 442c, engineer Minho watched Vextar dropships descend through the atmosphere. The colony had no military defenses. It was supposed to be protected by galactic law and common decency. Minho realized how foolish that seemed now. The alien ships landed like giant insects, unfolding metal legs and opening hatches. Vextar soldiers poured out, 3-meter-tall reptiles with energy weapons and acid spitters. They moved like professional killers, surrounding the colony buildings with practiced efficiency. Minho expected the colonists to panic, to run or hide or surrender. Instead, something strange happened. Old Daeho, who ran the mining equipment, picked up a plasma cutter and grinned. "Boys," he called to his crew, "my grandfather used to tell stories about the old days on Earth. Time to show these lizards why we're still here." The other miners didn't run. They grabbed their tools, plasma cutters, sonic drills, industrial lasers, metal crushers. Equipment designed to break apart asteroids and extract metals from solid rock. Minho realized that mining tools made very effective weapons. The first Vextar soldier through the main door got hit with a plasma stream hot enough to cut through starship armor. The alien's energy shield lasted less than a second. The Vextar had prepared for human police weapons and civilian firearms. They had not prepared for industrial equipment operated by people who use dangerous machinery for a living. Back on Luna Station, Dr. So-Min was making disturbing discoveries. She had been studying human genetics for years, looking for ways to help colonists adapt to different worlds. Now she was finding things in human DNA that should not exist. "These can't be natural," she whispered to herself, staring at the genetic sequences on her screen. Buried deep in human genetic code were activation patterns that responded to stress hormones and adrenaline, combat enhancement protocols, instructions for improving reflexes, increasing muscle density, enhancing night vision, and speeding up neural processing. It was as if someone had programmed humans for war, then locked the programs away until they were needed. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from the genetics lab on Mars, then another from the research station at Europa, then more from facilities across human space. Every human geneticist was finding the same thing. The war was activating something in human biology that had been sleeping for centuries. On Earth, Admiral Tae-sung received a report that made his blood run cold. Lieutenant Boram had found Protocol 7 in the deep archives, along with hundreds of other files that painted a very different picture of human history. "Sir," she said quietly, "these files, they say that humans didn't develop space travel to explore. We developed it to escape." "Escape what?" Tae-sung asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "Ourselves, sir. According to these records, by the year 2157, human military technology had become so advanced that we could destroy entire planets." The files mention something called the Geneva Accords of 2159, an agreement to lock away all military research and focus on peaceful expansion. Tae-sung read over her shoulder. The files contained detailed plans for weapons that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers, biological weapons that could target specific genetic markers, nanomachines that could disassemble matter at the molecular level, artificial intelligence systems designed specifically for military strategy. "My God," he whispered, "we didn't forget how to fight. We chose to forget." The computer system chimed again. New files were appearing in the database, files that had been sealed for over 300 years. The system was automatically unlocking them in response to the current threat level. On Kepler 442c, the battle was not going as the Vextar had planned. The human miners fought like demons, using their knowledge of the colony's layout to set traps and ambushes. They used mining explosives to collapse tunnels on advancing aliens. They used the colony's industrial systems as weapons, but more disturbing to the Vextar was how the humans fought. They didn't retreat when wounded. They didn't surrender when outnumbered. They coordinated their attacks with hand signals and shared looks, as if they had trained together for years. Minho found himself moving through the colony's maintenance tunnels with 3 other engineers, hunting Vextar soldiers. Part of his mind was horrified at what he was doing, but a deeper part, a part that felt ancient and familiar, was enjoying the hunt. "Contact ahead," whispered So-Young, the colony's atmosphere specialist. She pointed toward a thermal reading on her scanner. 3 of them moving toward the main power station. Minho nodded and hand-signaled to the others. They moved to surround the Vextar soldiers. He had never learned military tactics, but somehow he knew exactly what to do. His hands moved the plasma cutter with deadly precision. His feet found the quietest path through the debris. His eyes picked out the perfect angle of attack. When they struck, the Vextar soldiers never had a chance. Dr. Somin was now working with a team of researchers from across human space, all connected by emergency communication links. They were all finding the same thing. Human physiology was changing in response to the war. Colonists who had never seen combat were moving faster, thinking quicker, reacting with inhuman speed. Children born on peaceful farming worlds were showing tactical instincts that impressed military analysts. Even elderly humans who had spent decades in retirement were volunteering for combat duty and performing far beyond what should have been possible. It's like evolution in fast forward, reported Dr. Yunsu from the research station at Titan. Stress hormones are activating dormant genetic sequences. Within days, we're seeing improvements in reflexes, coordination, strategic thinking, and pain tolerance. But that's impossible, Somin replied. Evolution doesn't work that fast. Unless, suggested Dr. Kyung Min from the facility on Europa, these changes were already built into our genetics, waiting for the right trigger. Admiral Tae-sung had been reading the newly unlocked files for hours. What he found there changed everything he thought he knew about humanity. Humans had not been peaceful for 300 years. They had been dormant. Like bears in winter, they had been conserving their energy and hiding their true nature until it was needed again. The files contained production schedules for warships that could level continents, training programs that could turn accountants into commandos in weeks, psychological profiles that explained why humans had always been the dominant species on one of the galaxy's most dangerous planets. Lieutenant Boram, he said finally, send a message to all human colonies, all ships, all stations. What should it say, sir? Tae-sung looked at the genetic reports from Dr. Somin, the battle reports from Kepler 442c, and the unlocked military files from humanity's hidden past. Tell them it's time to remember who we are. Across human space, the message went out. In research labs and mining colonies, on cargo ships and farming stations, humans heard the call. And something ancient in their DNA began to respond. The Vextar Empire had wanted a war. They were about to get one. The Vextar Empire expected their war against humanity to last 3 months at most. Their military experts had studied human defenses and found them laughably weak. Human ships were designed for cargo and exploration, not combat. Human colonies had no serious weapons. Human soldiers had no real experience. The experts were wrong about everything. Commander Sun Woo stood on the bridge of what used to be a mining ship called the Rock Breaker. In just 2 weeks, human engineers had transformed it into something the galaxy had never seen. The cargo holds now contained missiles made from mining charges. The ore processing equipment had been converted into mass drivers that could launch chunks of metal at near light speed. The fusion reactor that once powered mining lasers now fed weapon systems that could crack open asteroids. Vextar fleet detected, reported Navigation Officer Hei Jin. 12 battleships, 36 destroyers, over 100 support craft. They're moving into attack formation, Sun Woo nodded. His small fleet of converted civilian ships was outnumbered 5-1. By all military logic, they should retreat or surrender. Signal the fleet, Sun Woo ordered. Begin attack pattern Omega. Hei Jin looked confused. Sir, that's not a real attack pattern. It is now, Sun Woo replied with a cold smile. All ships prepare for ramming speed. The human ships accelerated toward the Vextar fleet at maximum velocity. The aliens watched in confusion as the humans approached without firing their weapons. This was not how civilized species conducted warfare. Vextar Fleet Admiral Kernix tried to contact the human ships. Unknown vessels, you are approaching our battle formation at dangerous speed. Reduce velocity and prepare to surrender. Captain Jiwoo's voice came back over the communication channel. Her ship, the converted passenger liner New Horizon, was leading the charge. We don't surrender, Admiral. We innovate. At the last second, the human ships fired their weapons, not at the Vextar vessels, but at chunks of space debris floating nearby. The mining lasers and plasma cutters turned rocks and ice into clouds of high-velocity fragments. The human ships flew through these clouds, using their magnetic shields to capture the debris and turn themselves into massive shotgun shells. When they hit the Vextar formation, the result was devastating. The aliens had energy shields designed to stop directed energy weapons and missiles. They were not designed to stop entire ships moving at 30% of light speed and, covered in spinning metal fragments, the New Horizon punched through the hull of a Vextar battleship, like a bullet through paper. Captain Jiwoo's last transmission was heard across the battlefield. For New Seoul, for Haven's Rest, for everyone who said we were too soft to fight. Admiral Kernix watched in horror as his flagship was torn apart by the collision. Impossible. No species sacrifices their own ships. But the humans weren't sacrificing their ships. They were using them as ammunition. On the ground, the war was going even worse for the Vextar. They had expected to fight human soldiers using standard military tactics. Instead, they found themselves facing enemies who didn't follow any rules at all. Sergeant Hyun-soo led a squad of volunteers through the ruins of Darwin's Landing. Her team included a school teacher, 2 farmers, a chef, and a retired accountant. None of them had military training, but all of them had grown up on Earth or human colonies where survival skills were taught as basic education. The Vextar forces controlled the main settlement, but they only operated during the day. At night, they retreated to their fortified positions and waited for dawn. This was standard military procedure for most galactic species. Humans, however, were evolved from predators that hunted in the dark. Remember, Hyun-soo whispered to her team as they moved through the darkness. We're not trying to win battles. We're trying to make them afraid to sleep. The humans moved like ghosts through the alien positions. They didn't attack directly. Instead, they left surprises. Explosive charges placed under supply depots, acid from the colony's chemical plant, poured into ammunition storage areas. Mining equipment reprogrammed to activate at random times and attack anything that moved. By morning, the Vextar soldiers were exhausted and paranoid. Their equipment was sabotaged, their supplies were contaminated, and their perimeter was filled with traps that turned their own technology against them. But the psychological warfare was the worst part. The humans had studied Vextar biology and discovered that their enemy had excellent hearing but poor night vision. So the humans spent the dark hours making sounds, whispers in the alien language, recordings of Vextar distress calls, noises that suggested large predators moving just outside the light. By the end of the first week, some Vextar soldiers were shooting at shadows. Dr. Somin had moved her research to a military facility deep underground on Earth. Her genetic studies were now classified at the highest levels, because what she was discovering terrified even the human leadership. The war was changing human physiology faster than anyone had thought possible. Soldiers in the field were developing enhanced night vision within days of combat. Their reflexes were speeding up to inhuman levels. Their pain tolerance was increasing dramatically. It's like our genes are responding to natural selection in real time, she explained to Admiral Tae-sung during a video conference. Every generation of humans that survived on Earth had to be faster, stronger, and smarter than the generation before. Those survival traits are still in our DNA, waiting to be activated. She showed him brain scans from human soldiers. Look at this. Increased activity in the areas responsible for spatial awareness, threat assessment, and tactical planning. These changes are happening within weeks, not generations. Are you saying the war is making us evolve? Tae-sung asked. I'm saying the war is making us remember what we evolved to be, So-min replied. Earth didn't just make us intelligent, it made us into the perfect killing machines. On the industrial world of Proxima Station, factory worker Jun-sik had become something that scared even his friends. The enhancement drugs developed by Dr. Somin's team had pushed his nervous system beyond normal human limits. He could process battlefield information faster than most computers. His reaction time was measured in microseconds. When Vextar drop troops landed at the factory complex, they expected to fight scared civilians. Instead, they found Jun-sik waiting for them. He moved through their formation like water flowing around rocks. Their energy weapons couldn't track him. Their tactical computers couldn't predict his movements. He used industrial tools as weapons, plasma welders, gravity manipulators, atmospheric processors designed to reshape entire planets. The Vextar soldiers were professional killers who had conquered dozens of worlds. But they had never faced anything like a human who had stopped thinking of himself as civilized. Intelligence Officer Hee-jin was analyzing reports from across the war zone, and what she found disturbed her more than the alien attacks. According to her data, human casualties were much lower than expected. Human tactical performance was improving daily. Human psychological profiles were showing disturbing changes. "Admiral," she reported to Taesung, "I need to share something with you. Our people aren't just adapting to this war. They're enjoying it." She showed him video reports from the battle zones, human fighters laughing as they hunted Vextar soldiers, civilian volunteers competing to see who could design the most creative booby traps, children on safe worlds playing games that simulated increasingly violent scenarios. "Look at the brain chemistry reports," Hyejin continued. "Dopamine and endorphin levels are off the charts during combat situations. Our people are getting biochemical rewards for violence." Taesung studied the data grimly. "How long before we become the monsters we're fighting?" "Sir," Hyejin said quietly, "I think we already are monsters. We just forgot for a while." Across human space, the transformation continued. Peaceful merchants were becoming raiders who attacked Vextar supply lines. Academic researchers were designing weapons that violated every galactic convention on warfare. Artists were creating propaganda that inspired humans to fight with fanatic dedication. The Vextar Empire had awakened something that the galaxy had spent centuries helping humanity suppress. They had reminded humans that their species had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain by being more dangerous than everything else on the planet. Admiral Koenig sent a desperate message to the Galactic Council. "You must intervene. The humans are not following the rules of war. They attack at night. They use civilian ships as weapons. They torture prisoners for information. They're turning this into a war of extinction." Elder Zephyr's reply was broadcast across the galaxy. "We warned you." The archives from the predecessor species were clear. "Never wake the humans. Never make them remember what they are. You have violated the oldest rule in the galaxy, and now you must face the consequences." The war was only 3 months old, but the Vextar Empire was already beginning to collapse. Not because they were losing battles, but because they were losing the will to fight an enemy that seemed to grow stronger and more savage with every passing day. Humanity had remembered something that the peaceful galaxy had made them forget. Sometimes, the only way to preserve civilization is to become uncivilized. 6 months after the war began, the Vextar Empire was dying. What had started as a 300-world domain spanning half a galaxy had shrunk to 12 heavily fortified core systems. Their military, once the most feared force in known space, was reduced to desperate survivors hiding behind increasingly useless defenses. General Wu Jin stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Terra's Fury, watching as human battle fleets emerged from hyperspace around the Vextar homeworld. But these were not the converted civilian ships that had started the war. These were vessels designed and built by a species that had remembered what they were truly capable of. The ships were black as space itself, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons were not the energy beams or plasma cannons used by other galactic civilizations. Human engineers had developed something far worse, weapons that attacked matter itself, breaking apart the atomic bonds that held starships together. "Sir," reported Navigation Officer Yunsu, "all civilian evacuation vessels have cleared the system. The planet is secured and ready for final assault." Wu Jin hesitated. Through the viewing screen, he could see the Vextar homeworld, a beautiful planet with purple oceans and silver continents. Billions of aliens lived on that world. Most of them had never supported the war against humanity. "General," came a voice from the communication station, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different Vextar factions. They're willing to accept any terms." But Wu Jin knew it was too late for surrender. The human war machine had become something beyond his control. Across human space, entire planets had been converted into military production facilities. Children were being born with enhanced genetics designed for combat. The peaceful civilization that had existed before the war no longer existed. On the surface of the Vextar homeworld, Speaker Silmesh cowered in his underground bunker. The same alien who had confidently declared war on humanity now spent his days sending desperate messages to anyone who might help. "You must intervene," he pleaded in a transmission to the Galactic Council. "The humans have gone insane. They don't take prisoners. They don't honor surrender. They fight like demons." Elder Zephyr's response came through the communication system, translated into harmonics of ancient sadness. "We tried to warn you, Speaker Silmesh. The predecessor archives were clear about what happens when you threaten the humans. They called them the End War species. What does that mean? Silmesh demanded. It means they are the species that ends wars, Zephyr replied. Not by making peace, but by making sure their enemies can never fight again. The elder's crystal body flickered with colors of remembered terror. The last time humans were fully awakened, 67 galactic civilizations simply vanished. Not destroyed in battle, vanished, completely, as if they had never existed. Across human space, the transformation was complete. The peaceful traders and explorers who had first joined the Galactic Council were gone, replaced by something that frightened even their allies. Teacher Young Su now commanded a battle group of 30 warships. His students, some as young as 12, served as tactical advisors because their enhanced minds could process battlefield data faster than adult brains. The children treated the war like the ultimate video game, designing strategies that professional military minds found both brilliant and terrifying. Artist Nari had become the head of human weapons development. Her creations were beautiful and horrible, weapons that killed with mathematical precision, defenses that adapted to enemy attacks in real time, and psychological warfare tools that could break enemy morale through pure fear. Even 12-year-old Jin'ei had been recruited into the war effort. Her tactical simulations were so advanced that human commanders used her game scenarios as actual battle plans. She treated the destruction of entire enemy fleets as puzzle-solving exercises. Dr. Soman's research had evolved far beyond simple genetic enhancement. Working with teams of scientists who had abandoned all ethical constraints, she was now creating new types of humans specifically designed for warfare. The children born during this war are not the same species we were before, she reported to the Human High Command. Enhanced reflexes, improved pattern recognition, increased aggression responses, and most importantly, they feel no guilt about violence. She showed brain scans that made the military leaders uncomfortable. Normal humans have neural pathways that create emotional distress when they harm others. These new children don't have those pathways. They can kill without psychological trauma. Are we creating a generation of psychopaths? Asked Admiral Tae-sung. We're creating a generation of perfect soldiers, So-min replied. Whether that's the same thing depends on how you define humanity. On the industrial moon of Titan, former accountant Dong Hyun was overseeing the production of humanity's newest weapon, nanomachines that could disassemble enemy ships at the molecular level. The tiny robots were programmed to recognize Vextar genetic markers and destroy anything that contained them. The beautiful thing about nanoweapons, he explained to a group of visiting commanders, is that they're completely selective. They'll destroy every Vextar in the galaxy, but they won't harm a single human or any of our allied species. What about innocent Vextar civilians? Asked one commander. Dong Hyun looked confused. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. How can a Vextar be innocent? They declared war on us. That makes them all enemy combatants. The logic was perfect and horrible. Humanity had redefined the concept of war itself. There were no civilians, no neutrals, no innocent bystanders. There were humans and their allies, and there were enemies to be eliminated. Intelligence officer Hye Jin had been monitoring communications across the galaxy. What she discovered was that other alien civilizations were more afraid of humanity than they were of the Vextar. Sir, she reported to Admiral Tae-sung, we're receiving messages from 43 different species asking us to accept Vextar surrender. They're offering to pay reparations themselves if we'll just stop the war. Why would they do that? Tae-sung asked. Because they're afraid we won't stop with the Vextar, Hye Jin replied. They think once we finish with our current enemy, we'll find new ones. Tae-sung considered this. The human war machine was now producing more weapons and ships than they could possibly use against the Vextar. Human colonies were being established in former Vextar territory. Before the aliens had even been completely defeated, human children were being educated with military tactics as core curriculum. Are they right to be afraid? He asked. Admiral, Hye Jin said carefully, when this war started, humanity controlled 12 systems. Today we control over 200. Our population is growing faster than ever before because we're colonizing conquered territory. Our military production exceeds our actual needs by a factor of 10. And our people seem addicted to the warfare. She showed him psychological profiles of human soldiers. Look at these brain chemistry reports. Combat veterans show severe depression and anxiety when removed from battle conditions. They're only happy when they're fighting. On the former Vextar colony world of Serpent's Crown, Captain Minho was overseeing the integration of captured alien populations. The Vextar survivors were not being killed or enslaved. Instead, they were being absorbed into human society in a way that was somehow worse. Young Vextar were being educated in human schools, where they learned that their species had been inferior and aggressive. Adult Vextar were required to serve in human auxiliary forces, fighting against their own kind. Vextar culture, history, and language were being systematically erased and replaced with human equivalents. "We're not committing genocide," Minho explained to a group of galactic observers. "We're committing culturecide. By the time we're finished, the Vextar will still exist as individuals, but they'll think like humans, act like humans, and serve human interests." The observers were horrified, but they could not argue with the effectiveness. Captured Vextar were becoming some of humanity's most loyal supporters, because they had been convinced that their own species had been fundamentally wrong about everything. General Wu Jin received a final message from the Vextar homeworld. It was not from Speaker Silmesh, but from a group of civilian leaders who had overthrown their own government. "We surrender unconditionally," the message said. "We will accept any terms. We will serve any role you assign us. We will change our society in any way you demand. Please just let our children live." Wu Jin looked around the bridge of his dreadnought. His officers were waiting for orders. The human fleet had weapons that could sterilize the planet below in minutes. They had nanomachines that could eliminate every Vextar in the galaxy in days. But they also had something more terrifying: the knowledge that they enjoyed having this power. "Signal the fleet," Wu Jin ordered finally. "Accept their surrender. Begin integration protocols." As the human ships moved into orbit around the Vextar homeworld, Elder Zephyron sent one final message to the galaxy. "The war is over, but the humans have not stopped. They have tasted what they truly are, and they like it. The Endwar species has awakened, and I fear they will never sleep again." The oldest rule in the galaxy had been broken, and now everyone would live with the consequences. 2 years after the Vextar War ended, Ambassador Kang Ho sat once again in the Galactic Council chambers. But everything had changed. The Great Hall that once held hundreds of different alien species now accommodated only 37. The rest had either been destroyed, absorbed, or had simply fled to unknown regions of space. The human delegation no longer sat in a small corner section. Their chairs occupied the center of the hall, with all other species arranged around them like planets orbiting a star. When Kang Ho spoke, the universal translators carried his words with absolute priority. When he was silent, the entire galaxy waited. President Su Jin of the Terran Federation stood to address what remained of galactic civilization. She was young for a human leader, only 35 years old, but she had been born during the war. Her generation had never known true peace. "Fellow representatives," she began, her voice calm and confident, "we gather today to formalize the new galactic charter. The old galaxy is dead. You declared war on a species you did not understand, and forced us to become what we had tried very hard to forget." Elder Zephyr's crystal body flickered with dim colors of resignation. He was one of the few pre-war leaders still alive, and his species had survived only by immediately surrendering when the war began. "The predecessor archive spoke of this day," he said, his harmonic voice barely audible. "They called it the Great Silence, the last time humans were fully awakened. Most galactic civilizations simply disappeared." "Not disappeared," President Su Jin corrected gently. "Evolved, changed, improved." She gestured to the Vextar delegation. The former enemies now wore human-style clothing and served as auxiliary members of the Terran Federation. Speaker Silmesh was no longer their leader. He had been replaced by a younger Vextar named Veltar, who had been educated in human schools. "The Vextar Empire is gone," Su Jin continued, "but the Vextar people are not. They serve alongside us now, contributing their natural warrior instincts to the betterment of galactic civilization. Under human guidance, they have become productive members of society." Veltar stood and bowed deeply. "The Terran Federation has shown us the error of our previous thinking. We are grateful for the opportunity to serve the greater good." His words were perfectly sincere. The integration process had been so complete that most former Vextar genuinely believed their old culture had been primitive and wrong. Admiral Jiwoo, now Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces, presented the new charter. The terms were simple and non-negotiable. All interstellar travel, trade, and communication would be managed by human authorities. All conflicts between species would be resolved by human arbitrators. All military forces would operate under human command. But, President Sujin added, each species will maintain complete autonomy over their internal affairs. We have no interest in micromanaging your cultures, religions, or social structures. We only require that you never again threaten galactic peace. The representatives looked at each other nervously. The offer seemed reasonable, but they all knew what happened to species that disagreed with human definitions of peace. Dr. Somin, now Director of Galactic Genetic Research, had discovered something that disturbed even the human leadership. The genetic changes triggered by the war were not reversing. If anything, they were becoming stronger. Children born after the war show even more enhanced capabilities than their parents, she reported to the human high command. Improved reflexes, enhanced tactical thinking, increased aggression responses, and most concerning, a complete lack of empathy for non-human suffering. General Wu Jin studied the genetic charts grimly. Are you saying we're becoming a different species? I'm saying we already have become a different species, So Min replied. Homo sapiens evolved into Homo galacticus during the war. The question is whether this is evolution or devolution. She showed brain scans of human children. They can process information faster than computers, coordinate complex strategies without communication, and feel genuine pleasure when they solve problems through violence. They're perfectly adapted for galactic dominance, but are they still human? Wu Jin asked. That depends on how you define humanity, So Min answered. They carry human DNA, but their psychology is completely different from pre-war humans. They see other species as resources to be managed, not as equals to be respected. On the former Vextar homeworld, now renamed New Terra, young Lieutenant Dong Hyun was training the first generation of integrated alien-human military units. The soldiers under his command included Vextar, Quell, and members of a dozen other species, all working together under human leadership. The key to successful integration, he explained to visiting military observers, is to make them want to serve us. Forced loyalty creates rebellion, but if you can convince them that serving human interests is in their own best interests, they become genuinely loyal. The alien soldiers nodded eagerly at his words. They had been taught that their species' previous independence had led to conflict and suffering. Under human guidance, they believed, the galaxy was finally becoming peaceful and prosperous. But the observers noticed something disturbing. The alien soldiers moved and spoke like humans. Their body language, their thought patterns, even their facial expressions had been subtly altered to match human norms. They were still physically the same species, but mentally they had become something else. What about species that refuse integration? Asked one observer. Donghyun smiled. That hasn't been a problem. We found that most species quickly see the benefits of cooperation once they understand the alternatives. The alternatives were not discussed in detail, but everyone knew what happened to systems that declared themselves independent of human authority. They simply stopped communicating with the rest of the galaxy. Trade ships that visited those regions never returned. Intelligence officer Haye Jin had been monitoring the outer edges of human space, where exploration fleets were making contact with previously unknown civilizations. What she found troubled her deeply. Sir, she reported to Admiral Tae-sung, our first contact protocols have evolved since the war. Instead of establishing diplomatic relations, our exploration teams are immediately establishing dominance. She showed him reports from the frontier. Human ships would arrive in alien systems, demand immediate surrender, and begin integration procedures before the aliens even understood what was happening. Species that resisted were eliminated. Species that cooperated were absorbed. We're not exploring anymore, Hee-jin continued. We're conquering. And our people see this as completely normal. Tae-sung read the reports with growing unease. How many new species have we contacted in the past year? 47 species have been integrated. 12 species have been removed. And we're expanding our territory faster than we can properly administer it. Are we building an empire or a prison? Tae-sung asked. Does it matter? Hee-jin replied. The result is the same either way. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, the formal vote was taking place. The new charter would establish the Terran Federation as the supreme authority over all galactic civilization. Each remaining species would vote to accept or reject the proposal. One by one, the alien delegates cast their votes. Accept, accept, accept. There was no real choice. Every species had seen what happened to those who opposed human authority. Elder Zephyron was the last to vote. His crystal body pulsed with colors of deep sadness as he spoke. The Quell Collective accepts the new galactic charter. We understand that this is the only path to survival. President Sujin nodded graciously. Thank you for your wisdom, Elder Zephyron. Under human guidance, your species will prosper. Will we still be us? The elder asked quietly. Sujin's smile was kind but cold. You will be the best version of yourselves. As the session ended, young Lieutenant Minjae asked his superior a question that would define the new galactic age. Sir, what if another species challenges us in the future? What if we encounter aliens from outside our galaxy who don't accept human authority? Admiral Wu Jin's response was broadcast across every human world and integrated alien system. Then they will learn what the Vextar learned. There is a reason the old rule existed. Do not challenge the humans. We didn't make that rule to protect ourselves. He paused, looking out at the stars that now belonged to his species. We made it to protect them. The galaxy was finally at peace, human peace. Under human authority, there were no more wars, no more conflicts, no more threats to galactic stability. Trade flowed smoothly along human-controlled routes. Justice was administered by human courts according to human law. Progress was measured by human standards. And in the deepest archives of the Galactic Council, Elder Zephyron made one final entry in the historical records. The humans warned us they were dangerous. We didn't listen. They warned us they had been monsters once before. We didn't believe them. They warned us that peace was the only thing keeping them civilized. We didn't understand, now we know. The oldest rule in the galaxy existed for a reason. The humans didn't create it to boast about their power. They created it as a mercy, a final warning to anyone foolish enough to wake the sleeping dragon. We broke the rule. We challenged the humans. And now we live in the world they built for us. It is a peaceful world, a prosperous world, a safe world.